when I was a little kid, I was Ricky. And then when I went to school, everybody called me Richard. And then when I got to high school, as soon as the track thing started to happen, everybody started calling me Rocket. And then I got in Triumph and they misspelled my name on an album, and R-I-C-K Rikk became R-I-K Rikk. That's like the mask. Wearing the mask for a couple of decades, sometimes it's pretty hard to take it off.
We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Welcome to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. Online at bookedonrock.com, where you can find every episode along with links to listening platforms, exclusive videos, blogs, and the latest rock book releases. Rik Emmett of Triumph is this episode's guest. He's just released a new book titled Laid on the Line, a backstage pass to rock star adventure, conflict, and triumph. Rik talks about how Triumph formed and rose to fame, and what led to his departure from the band by the end of the 80s. He shares his songwriting process, the Triumph song he's most proud of, what it was like making the transition to a solo artist in the 90s, and why he turned down an offer to join Boston. A playlist of Triumph, along with some of Rik Emmett's best solo tracks, on the show notes page. Rik Emmett, welcome to the Booked on Rock podcast. It's great to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too.
What a book. And I was just telling you before we started recording, a very inspirational read, an enjoyable read. So much for people to get out of this book, whether it's from an inspirational standpoint or just if you're a musician and you're looking for some tips on songwriting and just to read about your career. It's just outstanding. Congrats on the book.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've been getting nice feedback, doing interviews and stuff. Now, of course, there's another side of it too. I was sitting with my wife this afternoon and she was saying, well, I saw a review on Amazon. They weren't too happy. There's just not enough Triumph in the book,
Wow.
And I go, well, okay, I can get that, but it's not a Triumph book. It's a Rik Emmett book, and my life, literally the way the book sort of ended up shaking out was there's a Triumph chapter and it's 30 pages ish, but there's 16 chapters and my life was about other stuff, and the fact that I was a teacher and a leader of bands and a father and a husband, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of, and I was talking about with my editor, Michael Holmes, on the phone today. And he was saying, yeah, it's like self-help. It's like motivational. It's like, there's a lot of stuff about music business mentoring kinds of. I go, of course, I taught for 20 years. That stuff's going to be in there,
I love the fact you're so honest about your battles through the years with anxiety. I have the same thing, and I just thought it was so cool to read that. Was this book cathartic for you to write about some of the difficult periods of your life?
It is, but I hasten to add that if you struggle from stuff like anxiety and stress can do things to you, stress doesn't ever necessarily go away in life, and that's not because not all stress is self-induced. Like sometimes your loved ones get sick or are battling through things, or just life in general is kind of pressing in on you, and you don't really have control over that. So you're always playing that game of balancing how do you control the things that you can't. Like my wife and I were having a conversation yesterday about how the Israel-Palestine stuff, if you watch too much news lately, you just get this incredibly despondent feeling about the future. And you got to go, okay, well, stop for a second. Like, that Israel-Palestine thing's been going on to different degrees all of my life. It's never gone away. So how much stuff do I want to take on from outside and see? I have to go, oh, okay, wait, And of course, I always had the nice release of being able to pick up one of these things and, time travel, escape, however you want to describe it,
Magic power is about the music, about feeling young, not being young, but feeling young, and music can do that.
Yes, it sure can. I mean, well, when I was a little kid, I was about 9 years old, and my mother had bought all of us little transistor radios. And so you could sneak it under the pillow at night. You could, the world was now this little box, and Hit Parade at the age of 9, it was like, okay, the the world is opening up for me. So, one of the verses talks about, she climbs into bed, she pulls the covers. It was me, I was really being autobiographical. And the Allied Forces album was a very autobiographical kind of record. It had Ordinary Man on it, which might have been the most sort of profound autobiographical thing I ever wrote during that period of my life. It always did seem to me to be something that I write every day. So today I was writing something about, reaching for the infinite, touching the infinite, being aware of the infinite. And, I guess some people go to church and they get that sense when they're in prayer or whatever. For me, it was music. Music was the thing that kind of made me go, oh yeah, there's like, I can see forever. I can touch forever. I've written these kinds of lines and lyrics all over the place, but I think that also, it allows the stress to kind of, it lets the air out of the compression that's happening. You kind of go, yeah, but this goes on forever. And I used to tell students this as well in my songwriting classes. You shouldn't be very cocky about being a writer, because you're really staring into the face of infinity when you're engaging in a creative act. And that should keep you kind of humble and modest, that, you're trying to feel your way. You're trying to figure it out. And you don't want to think that you don't know. You only know what you feel. And that's kind of how you figure out where you're going next, But it's an infinite pursuit. It should make you pretty humble.
Songwriting is something, yeah, you could get better at it the more you do it, but it's also just something that comes from creative thoughts. Where do they come from?
Yeah, obviously Leonard Cohen was, one of the great writers of all time, and revered by so many, more for his lyrics than for, but his songs too. He kept them intentionally very, very simple musically, but lyrically they were, heavy duty. But he said, look, if I knew where the really good songs come from, don't you think I'd go and visit there more often?
Sure.
Because the process, and Cohen used to rewrite lyrics over and over and over, he would have dozens and dozens of rewrites of songs that had already been on a record. They'd already been put out, and he would still be going, not sure I figured that one out necessarily. He was never 100% sold on Hallelujah. Never.
Really?
Yeah. Then he used to sing verses live that were different and in different order than he'd necessarily composed in the early days and stuff. And so, yeah, I do think that there's a thing about being a creative person where you do have to sort of come to terms with the fact that you're like an explorer, a pioneer, and you're kind of landing on beaches that you're thinking, oh, this is the new world here,
Yeah.
I should be careful. There's an old, I'm thinking about a Ray Bradbury short story where they could time travel, but you could only walk on the floating paths, and you weren't supposed to. And of course, I think the butterfly effect was something that Ray Bradbury kind of invented, because somebody stepped on a bug or something, and it literally changes the course of history, so that when they return from being in the past where somebody did something they weren't supposed to do, it's like now the present has changed.
Fascinating. Now let's talk the music business, because there's music in the music business, and you wrote "The music business chose me as much as I chased it." When did you first realize that music was going to be what was the driving force, that you were going to do this for a living?
Probably took me about a year after I tore my knee up playing football. So I was in high school, and I was 17 years old, and I was very good at it because I was quick. I was a really fast runner. But I got my knee torn up and I lost my ACL, and I had medial collateral damage and stuff. So it was really badly wrecked, and I was never able to recover. I tried because I was still a jock in terms of my mentality. But so I would say it was probably in my 18th year when I decided, oh, okay, so the dream of becoming a pro athlete, and of course, it was probably a pipe dream anyways. I was 5'8". I weighed about 140 pounds. I was not going to become, a professional football player or baseball player or whatever, but you're a kid, you're dreaming. But that was the year when I went, okay, I'm going to get really serious about this music thing because I want to play for a living. I don't want to have to work. So if I can't play sports, okay, then I'm going to play music. And I'd always been good at music, singing in the choir, getting a guitar and becoming good at playing guitar in a fairly short period of time, which is to say, I'll be humble again here, being better than your peers is not necessarily that you're becoming great. I was able to pick it up at a quicker pace than other folks. But that was the year that I bought a Fender Telecaster and a little Fender amp, and I got my union card and I started gigging, and I was still in high school, but yeah, that was a big year for me.
And then August of 1975, your life would change. This is the beginning of the story of Triumph. So how does the band come together? What were those early days like working with bassist Mike Levine and drummer Gil Moore?
Well, I was in a band called Act 3, which was kind of a progressive thing. And with a very good friend of mine, Dent Young was the drummer. And there had been a bass player in it called Chris Brockway. And the three of us, we really did have something kind of extraordinary that was starting to happen. But Chris and Denton had a falling out. And then we had to replace Chris. And it really wasn't the same. The Triumph guys came and saw me playing in a bar, the Hollywood Tavern in Etobicoke in Toronto. They said, hey, look, we have a record contract. I go, you don't even have a band yet and you have a record contract? And then they said, why don't we just come out, to Gil's house in Mississauga and we'll have a jam session and we can just check it out. And I went, okay, I will. So the next week I went out to Gil's place and they had tour posters and stickers and Gil was a kind of a booking agent that he could book his own band and so he had connections to high school bookers and promoters, and he knew bar owners. And Gil sat on the board of the Toronto Musicians Association as a kind of a rock rep, and Mike Levine's dad was the vice president of he played bass in the Toronto Symphony. So, and these guys were smart and they were connected. Now, when we sat down and played, I was not all that impressed with the fact that they didn't seem to be the kind of guys that practiced very often. They had smarts, they had abilities, but they were clearly not in great shape as me. And I would say, so then they said, well, what do you think? You want to join? I said, well, we better practice a lot. There better be a lot of, if I'm going to do this, you're going to have to take my feelings and my ambitions 1/3 into account. And they went, oh yeah, absolutely. So it was like Three Musketeers and I fell for it and I was in.
And Rocky Mountain Way was the song that really, it started the momentum for the band. The cover of Rocky Mountain Way.
Yeah, we used to play it as a bar band in the very early days. And then we made our first record in a real hurry and put it out. And we were touring and playing gigs and things. And we were, desperately trying to pursue American record deal because as a Canadian band, you haven't really. So we were crossing the border and playing gigs and these things were happening. And then the record company says, okay, well, we want a second record. And we went into pre-production and we just didn't have enough material. And so at one point, Levine, he was kind of like the record producer. Levine said, well, how about Rocky? And we needed songs for Gil to sing because I didn't really have a problem writing songs that I could sing. But then Gil would sort of be lagging in terms of creatively. He had so many other things he was doing, kind of managing the band and So, yeah, we tried it in rehearsal and then we decided, hey, this is great. If we kind of simplify it, if we get rid of the talk box solo and, just kind of make it Canadian radio might play it, especially AM radio, because it's a very simple, recognizable riffs kind of rock song. And so, yeah, one thing led to another, and that's exactly what happened. It was we got a lot of airplay in Canada. It made us be able to go from playing smaller venues to playing not the big arenas, but smaller arenas and tour and have our big production with our flamethrower and our flash pots and our cop car lights. And yeah, so it was great.
Yeah, and then things start to take off after that. Then the hit singles come in, Hold On, Late on the Line. And you write about the 1981 album, Allied Forces. That's one of the brightest shining moments in Triumph history. Engineer Mike Jones got some great sounds out of the guitars. Magic Power, Fight the Good Fighter among Triumph's best. Magic Power, top 20 in Canada, number 51 in the US. Was that one of those like, yeah, this is going to be a hit when you finished it and listened back?
Well, it's lovely for you to, talk about it in those glowing terms. It was not a song that crossed over to AM radio, but it probably charted top 5 for FM radio, AOR radio, album oriented radio, and that was right in the heart of the time when album rock radio was the thing. MTV hadn't really started to change the nature of the business yet. And Magic was really something that changed the nature of how Triumph was perceived, because now we had a song that in fact women liked it as much as men did. And we had been a harder rock band, mostly guys coming to buy our concert tickets, and Allied Forces changed everything because of course MTV was also starting to happen, and Rikk was with his long blonde hair and his jumpsuits, whatever, that stuff was starting to make a difference. The curious thing, as you were talking about Magic Power, but at the same time that the Allied Forces stuff was happening at AOR radio, MTV had been playing the videos from the Just a Game album, which had Lay It on the Line, because they were hard up for stuff to play in their rotation. Not a lot of bands had made videos. So in the early 80s, they played Lay It on the Line and Hold On. And so that was something that was now starting to change the way that the band was being perceived, which was a lovely thing for us.
How crazy was that MTV, what it could do for bands? Did you realize how much of a tool that was, a marketing tool? Because normally you got to get the song on radio stations and go from market to market and really work it hard. And then all of a sudden, if you had a video on MTV, it's like overnight. Yeah.
And it certainly saved you a lot of intermediate steps. The big thing too was that you could literally become, you wouldn't have to, and a good example would be, say, Duran Duran. They never really had to ever tour and build it up. When they came to America, they could literally go into fairly large buildings and be selling hard tickets at hard ticket concert prices because of MTV. And of course, every agent, every manager in the business was seeing that and going, right. So, and record companies are going, they can see how they're seeing sales, getting sales from things. So that whole old model of, and I think if he maybe looked at, say, Bryan Adams, he'd been a guy that had gone out and he'd opened for everybody. He just toured and toured and toured as an opening act, building himself up so that he could be seen by hard ticket audiences who would then maybe start to think of him as, oh, he might be a concert guy we'd want to go see. We like his songs. I mean, radio could break you, but only MTV was the thing that could turn you into a media darling thing in a real hurry, So it definitely changed the nature of things, that's for sure.
I was listening to Magic Power in the car today, and I wanted to ask you about the lyrics. I thought it was interesting that the character in the song is a female. She's young now, she's wild now, she's free. Was that written about somebody you know?
No, it was about me. It was autobiographical. Originally, it was he, or maybe it wasn't like the original font was about me, but maybe I started. Here's a trick, and I used to tell this to songwriters. It's not a trick, but it's a thing that songwriters do, and it's certainly something that I do. First, a song usually has 3 verses, right? First verse, you set the scene. You're trying to answer the standard questions, who, what, when, where, why, like you're just trying to set the scene. So time and place, and you establish it. Usually it's going to be I do this, I saw this, I blah, 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 Then the second verse can be, you, blah, 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 blah. That's the second verse. And then the third verse can kind of go, we, blah, blah, blah. And so now what I've done is I start singing the song, and then I'm pulling you in, and you're listening to that second verse, and you're going, ooh, this is about me. And then I go, we, us, and so now you kind of turn it into this anthem kind of thing where you've pulled everybody into the song. And so by the time you're getting to the chorus and you're going, I'm young now, I'm wild, everybody is pumping their fist in the air because
cool. Yeah.
everybody in the room is young and wild and free. Everybody gets the idea now.
Yes. What about the opening line? How important is that? The opening lyric.
It is, I mean, yeah, anything is always important. But of course, if you were in a songwriting seminar workshop with me, I would also say, look, you know what's a really important thing? Don't bore us. Get to the chorus. Like their songs do have to have a certain amount of compression. So a perfect opening line would be one where you were going like, I'm trying to think of a great opening line that had a date and a place. Like you're going, it's Saturday night in the old town hall.
Oh, well,
boom.
what? Billy Joel, right? Piano. Was it on Saturday night in your, oh no, that's Captain Jack, right? Saturday night and you're all alone. I think it's something like that. I can't sing. So
Where you're going.
don't make me
Yeah,
sing.
that's all right. But you're going, you're going place, time, boom, boom. That's a great opening line, And if you make your second line be, Captain Jack Sparrow with his bloody sword, so now you're going, okay, now we've really set the story. Now we've got the protagonist and a bloody sword. Clearly there's going to be some kind of, story coming up about war and bloodshed. And so that's always a really good opening if you can kind of land your character and your time and your place really early.
The Booked on Rock podcast will be back after this. What is your proudest moment or song from Triumph? Is there one that really stands out for you personally?
From Triumph? Well, I really like that Allied Forces record. I don't know. Like my standard answer to this question is that if I could make my favorite Triumph album, I would be picking a couple songs from this one and a couple songs from that one. And, but if you're saying my proudest moment, I'm going to tell you what emotionally has been the longest lasting thing for me. The song Suitcase Blues that's at the end of the Just a Game album, second side.
Yes.
I played that every night at the end of my encore for decades when I went solo, because it was a song that was not, I'm a rock star. It was a song like, this is what it's like to be a rock star who's all alone in his hotel room at the end of the night. And it was a jazz tune. And it didn't belong on a rock record, but it was, this is who I am. These kinds of chord changes, this kind of voice leading, this kind of melodic writing. So I always felt proud of that tune. It had a lot, I owed a lot to Joe Pass for some of those chord progressions and things. But sometimes, I'll tell you a couple of stories. One, I was doing a radio show or something, and somebody played Hold On, and I hadn't heard it for a long time. And so they're playing the whole thing, the album version, and it got to the wire choir in the middle. So that's that part where it's like, hi-hats going, and there's this, and it's all harmonized guitars. And Mike Jones and I did that in an afternoon at Sounds Interchange Studios in downtown Toronto, in a room, by the way, where Rod Stewart was also recording. We were splitting the days. And so he was using it for vocals, and then I was doing guitars during the day. So, and I met him once in the washroom. We crossed paths in the washroom of the place. Anyhow, so I hadn't heard it in such a long time. And then I was listening back, I was going, man, that's really, it sounds good. Like those guitars have a lovely texture. And you mentioned Jonesy earlier. I mean, he's left us now. That's, God bless him. But yeah, he had that ability. He'd done Justin Hayward records and Moody Blues stuff in England. He had been a staff guy working in a studio there. And so that the Moody Blues, they used to do that, where they would record a guitar part, double it, triple it, now do a harmony, double it, triple it, and then bounce that all down so that you're not, you only got 24 tracks to work with. But Jonesy was a genius at that. And then, you get to the end of the day, and then you'd mix this stereo wire choir of all these guitar parts. But I had feedback guitars in there, and it was great. It was like, and I went, oh yeah, that was a pretty good moment,
Yeah.
And the Triumph catalog is littered with that stuff. There's things like that where I could pick any moment and go, oh yeah, there was that. I forgot. Yeah, that was a pretty good moment.
Late on the Line, Hold On, huge success. The third studio album, Just a Game, that's Triumph's breakthrough. But this presents you with a common problem in music, and that's the publishing, songwriting credit. So you did something which I think is really cool. You decide, let's split the songwriting credit to all three members, but it still didn't prevent problems that would come in the future. Why was that? What happened?
Yeah, well, I thought that if I made that kind of a gesture towards the idea of, and we had an ethos that existed that was like Three Musketeers, but we all had very wide-ranging responsibilities within the business of the band. Gil was like the general manager and chief accountant, and with his dad, and he was the guy that dealt with agents, and he was the guy that put together tour productions and stage management and hired and fired roadies. Like, it was a big responsibility, but the checks went across his desk. The money flowed through him. Levine was working radio and doing marketing and promotion, and he was very adept at kind of sales, and he could talk a real good game, and also expense account. And so at a certain point I was starting to worry, like, geez, those guys with their expense accounts and what's going on with the money, like, if they wanted to, take advantage of me, they could. So, but if I do this, where I say, hey, you know what, from now on, let's just make sure these songs get split three ways, there won't be any fighting anymore about who's going to sing what song, who's going to have a hit single, who's going to have an A-side, blah, 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 which was the stuff that between Lennon and McCartney, it sowed a lot of bad blood. And then the police, it broke the band up eventually, because they're going, Sting, we want a piece of all this publishing stuff.
To this day, Andy Summers said he's still going to try to file legal action against Sting for Every Breath You Take. He just said that. This is 40 years later.
Yeah. Because, of course, the amount of money that comes, especially over time, from publishing, if you have a successful song, it's crazy. It's amazing, Anyways, I made the gesture, but it didn't really change things because, and I've come to terms with this at the time. As the band was going on, 83, 84, 85, we changed labels. We went from RCA to MCA. Gil still really wanted to be a guy that was going to sing a hit single, front the band, be the star of the video. He really wanted that, and it was his ambition. So even though he was, doing all this other kind of general managing the band, and, it wasn't enough for him as the band was up and running. And it had been his band from get-go. Like, he was the leader on contracts. He was the guy that when we went to the first rehearsal, it was in his house, in his basement. You know what I mean? Like, it was Gil's band. He was the guy that had the band vehicle that we would use to go to gigs. He was the guy that had the truck we'd rent from to put the PA in, like all that kind of stuff. So, and when I was writing the Triumph chapter in the book, I had a friend read it, and he said, you shouldn't be too negative about, and don't dwell on the negative stuff, because Gil only ever wanted from the band what you got from it. You got it. The radio decided to play your songs, and you had these hits, and he just wanted the same thing that you wanted. So you can't blame him for that. You can't hold that against him. But I had been angry that what seemed to me the natural way that the band was going, that they tried to make it be something that it naturally wasn't. Even the record companies were going, hey, the blind guy should be singing those songs. Like, give us something that radio likes that the blind guy sings. So, but in the end, after a band is broken up and 7 years go by, 10 years go by, 20 years goes by, like, there's no point in holding on to those things anymore. They were the things of our youth and the things of our ambition, and all of those things are now ancient history.
You write about outgrowing the mask. This is referring to when you reached the height of fame with Triumph, and that was actually challenging. What did you mean by outgrowing the mask?
Well, the quote that I used in the book, which when I found it, I really, really liked it, is from John Updike. And he said, fame is a mask that eats into your face. And of course, there was a movie, Jim Carrey did a thing about a mask, and when he put it on, it changed his personality and made him this, incredibly outgoing, incredibly charismatic, larger than life, larger than David Lee Roth kind of, character. In show business, especially if you're a rock musician kind of guy, it's a world of gestures that are larger than life, being on a stage and trying to be like Mick Jagger and fill the space with your energy, cross the divide between the stage to the audience with that energy. So, I felt like when I was a kid I'm going to go back. When I was a kid and I went into grade 9, I was at least 1 year younger than everybody in my class. I'd accelerated a grade through grade school. But when you get, and I went to a high school where I didn't know anybody. I walked into my first day at grade 9. I knew no one in my class. And I was in a kind of a streaming thing where I was in with a lot of smart people. Like it was kind of like the brain class, but everybody was older. And the girls looked so grown up. They looked like women to me. I had guys that were literally shaving, in grade 9, because there was a lot of, Italian and Portuguese kind of guys in the cultural mix of that neighborhood. Anyhow, so I kind of became a class clown almost right away. It was my shooting my mouth off and running my mouth. And it became kind of like my persona. It was the beginning of a mask kind of a thing, And I've already told you, I had this kind of athletic gift. That didn't really happen much in grade 9, but in grade 10 in a huge way. I was on the football team and started being the guy that scored touchdowns. And so that was a big thing. It was like, whoa. So performance becomes this thing of, it's like a mask. It's like you go, yeah, but this is who I am. If I sing a song, my mom would, when I was a kid, go to church and she would say, well, you should sing the solo for the Christmas pageant. And I'm going, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, I'm shy. I don't want to do that. She goes, no. You'll overcome your shyness by doing just these kinds of things. So yes, you are going to do that. And so, it's not like my mom was nasty or evil. She was a stage mom in the sense that she took great pride and great pleasure from seeing her son be able to perform and do these things. But there's no question. It was like, there was a mask. It was getting built, and it was, that was becoming this thing of, okay, so when I was a little kid, I was Ricky. And then when I went to school, everybody called me Richard. And then when I got to high school, I was still Richard to everybody. But as soon as the track thing started to happen, everybody started calling me Rocket. Now I had a nickname. And then I got in Triumph, and they misspelled my name on an album. And R-I-C-K Rikk became R-I-K Rikk. And that's like the mask. That's part of it. I had this kind of persona that was like, well, yeah, when I do this, I'm not little Ricky. I'm not Rick. I'm not Richard. I'm R-I-K. I'm Rikk the Rocket. So I'll just be that guy. Wearing the mask for a couple of decades, sometimes it's pretty hard to take it off,
I would think, but you never fell into the trappings of the drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily, burn everybody's candle at both ends. Some guys seem to be able to handle it. I certainly couldn't, So, plus I had that jock thing of, hey, my body is a temple.
Well, yeah. Did you have to take care of your voice? I mean, you've got an outstanding voice. So did you do certain things like don't smoke?
Yep.
Right.
I mean, I did try it. When I was in a band in high school, there was a time where I went, I was just a singer in a band called Messiah for a little bit. And I can remember Thursday nights were rehearsal nights, and it was the middle of the school week, and my mom hated the fact that I was staying out really late going to these rehearsals. And I didn't play guitar. I only sang. And I didn't have to be part of the rehearsal all the time. So I walked down the street. I can time to kill while the band is rehearsing music parts. I buy a pack of smokes. I start smoking. I come back. I start singing. I sounded just like Rod Stewart. And the band goes, hey, you sound just like Rod Stewart. I go, yeah, maybe the smoking thing's not maybe that's not going to work out. So, yeah, I had to be careful. I had to take care of myself in order to try and get there for the next show, and be able to bring it for the people that They paid good money. And, the people on Thursday night, they shouldn't get the A show, and then the people on Friday night get the B show. People on Saturday are getting the C show. No. The people on Saturday deserve the same show that the people on Thursday got,
So does something like this, doing press interviews, you got to be careful that not talk too much? Or if you
I've sort of figured, plus I don't sing as much as I used to. I don't do live gigs anymore. Although I should say this, I'm going to Sweden. I'm playing a gig on New Year's as part of this Canadian contingent thing, as part of the World Junior Hockey Championships. And the guy who's the sort of promoter guy that puts it all together, he loves my singing, blah, blah, blah. I did a video online. You can find, if you just Google, Canadian cover crew, Rik Emmett, Eleanor Rigby. I sang Eleanor Rigby with a string quartet. And so the guy said to me, hey, Rik, do you want to come to, Sweden to be part of this thing? And we maybe do Beatles songs, we'll do Triumph songs. Rik, you can move the keys. You can do whatever you like. You can write your own ticket for this thing. So he eventually talked me into it. But then, and once I said, okay, he goes, hey, Rik, one of my favorite songs is My Love by Paul McCartney. Will you sing that? And I go, yeah, okay. So I've just started rehearsing it. Do you remember that song?
Yes, of course.
So the melody is like, na 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 na, do da 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 da, my love is understood everywhere with my love. My love does it good. Like it's so high, and I go, oh man, So I've started rehearsing it again, and I'm going, oh boy, I'm going to have to be very careful.
Yes.
How am I going to hit those high notes?
The Booked on Rock podcast will be back after this. Rik Emmett here to talk about his brand new book, Laid on the Line, A Backstage Pass to Rockstar Adventure, Conflict, and Triumph. I just want to sneak in two more Triumph questions because I don't think it's in the book. Who came up with the name Triumph? Was that already decided before you joined?
Yeah. And it was, I think it was a young lady who was sort of like, the president of the student council or the head of the dance committee from her school. And Gil knew her because he used to book his band. He had a band that was called Abernathy Shagnasters Wash and Wear Rock and Roll Band. And everybody just called it Abby Shag. And he would book it into high schools on weekends and sometimes into bars for split weeks. Those markets existed in the Ontario market. So he knew these buyers. And so I think it was like a girls' school, and he knew the buyer, and she caught wind of the fact that he was starting a new band because he pitched her. He sort of said, hey, in next fall, I'm going to have this new band, and it's going to be like this hard rock band with a lot of, stuff, blah, blah, blah. So he pitched her, and she sort of said, well, hey, we were sitting around and we came up with a list of names for bands. So I'm going to send you, and I think he had a fax machine or something. So she used the office's fax machine to send him a fax of this list of, and so Levine and him sat down and they went down the list and they go, Triumph, that's cool. Let's call the band Triumph. So when I showed up, they'd already printed posters and stickers and all this stuff. And they had a logo. It had a bowling ball at the middle of it, and it had the wings, but I didn't like it. I thought from an art perspective, it wasn't very good, art design wise. But they had posters that had like a devil's face when he had horns and he had sharp teeth and there was fire and things burning. And I went, what is this? And they said, well, we had posters that was going to be for a band called Hellfire, but they didn't use them. So we decided we use that as our artwork. I go, so you put something called Triumph on front of something that was for Hellfire, and you think that's, I go, yeah, that, but I took my time. It took me till about, I think it was the third album, the Just a Game album, where the Triumph logo changed. I went, guys, that really should get redesigned. And now we should be trying to find music that defines this name that we have. And so that was Hold On to Your Dreams.
Positive.
Yeah. You have to have songs that are about what the band stands for,
Last question is, and it has to do with Van Halen, because I remember back in my radio days when in 2006 or 7, when the rumors of Van Halen reuniting with Dave were swirling, there was a website out of Australia, melonicrock.com. The rumor was that you were going to be chosen to tour with Van Halen on that 07 tour. Any truth to that? Do you remember that?
No.
Is this news to you? Yeah. So I wonder where that came from.
Rumors, you're saying it was 2007?
It would have been, yeah, because Dave rejoined in 07 and they went on that tour with Wolfgang on bass. That was 07. So probably around like maybe
Okay.
06 when the rumors started to like, hey, we hear Dave's coming
Well, I
back.
don't, yeah, 06, I had not even reconciled with the
Right.
Triumph guys yet.
And
So-
they included like, yeah, Rik Emmett's going to get back with the guys to go out on tour with Van Halen. I remember reading that.
So that sounds like, a publicist decided to tell a story one day. Like, and, I wouldn't put it past somebody to kind of float something like that, because they kind of have and this would happen in the music business from time to time. Somebody has a kind of a dream, and they go, hey, wouldn't this be great? And so then they start kind of a little bit of a rumor, like, this might happen, it's possible it could. And you go, what is that? A guy that used to be an agent for us or something, And I wouldn't put it past.
And
There was a guy, Troy Blakely, that had been for both Van Halen and Triumph, and Sammy and Triumph. And so I'm thinking he could have got a secretary to make a phone call to somebody, like.
Yeah. So let's get to your solo career, because I find the solo career fascinating because you really get to be creative, like do anything you want to do. And quite a few solo albums. The first one, 1990s, absolutely hit number 25 in Canada, 52 in the US. 5 singles, including the top 20 singles, When a Heart Breaks and Saved by Love. World of Wonder hit number 22, but it's not your personal favorite, according to the book. You mentioned Swing Shift being one of your favorites.
Well, you're kind of jumping 2 eras. And there was an era that existed from 1990 to 95. I did 3 albums for an independent label called Duke Street. They had a deal with Universal in Canada. And so they were the distributor, which had been the distributor for Triumph. So those guys knew me and I knew them. And so it was a convenient marriage. And those 3 albums, I was still sort of entertaining notions of, hey, maybe I can be mainstream. Maybe I can get on the radio. But radio was already making shifts. Change was starting to happen. Grunge was coming in, guys in their 40s playing rock was kind of going out. So you're getting squeezed, There was still classic rock radio, and they were always going to be playing Zeppelin and, Van Halen and like the people that were the monsters. But a band like Triumph was going to start getting squeezed, And certainly the singer from Triumph was going to get squeezed right out, Plus, it didn't help that the first album I did, we made an American deal with Charisma Records, and it came out, and they worked it. And Saved by Love was the first thing they went to radio with, and it did great. It went top 10 the first couple of weeks it was out, and then Charisma went bankrupt. And so that album, they owned it. It was gone now. It was literally swirling down the toilet, gone.
Is that why it's not on streaming services? I don't think.
Yeah, but I have good news for you though.
Oh.
A guy's putting out a compilation now. It's going to be called Diamonds, the hard rock years. And I was able to choose the hard rock songs from those 3 albums. I'm also going to do another compilation later in a couple of years where I'm going to take the softer stuff and the singer-songwriter-y stuff, and I'm going to create a compilation of that. And these are being done high-end vinyl. I've been listening to the remixes and the remasters, and they're fantastic. And I'm putting on some of the old demos from that time that people have never heard. So
Awesome.
That era is going to get a nice little bump again for people that are record collectors and, people that are into that sort of thing. And so that's going to happen. Yeah, that should be out before Christmas. Like, people should be looking for that online. If they went to a place called Rock Paper Merch, that's the place. And Merch in Motion is the name of the guy's company. He'll have that Diamonds album up already. You could pre-order it if you want it. Now, to answer your question, the second, I did those 3 albums, and then the second phase of my career started around 1996, and I went, you know what? I'm just going to become indie. I'm not going to worry anymore about charts or promoting records to radio or any of that stuff. I'm just going to make records that I like, and I'm going to go out and play my gigs, and I'm going to sell them off the stage. I'm going to sell them off my website, and whatever happens, happens. And so the first 3 albums I made a classical guitar solo record, all instrumental. I made a blues record. I made a Swing Shift, which was jazz and archtop stuff. And then I made a blues record. And so that sort of became like a trilogy of these independent records. And then I had major labels coming to me and saying, hey, you want to make a distribution deal with us, a label distribution deal? Because that's what indie had changed the way streaming had changed everything had changed the way the music business was. So I made a deal with EMI in Canada, Capital EMI, and I had a distribution deal with them. And my records were out, and they were bricks and mortar retail was going down the toilet anyways. But it allowed me to sort of be. I never made a record where I lost money. I made them cheap. I sold enough of them that I was making a profit so that I could afford to make another one. And that was the new model that I come with. The reason I liked Swing Shift the most was because there's something about that music that I like, where there's that style of kind of smooth jazz, R&B, blues meets jazz. I still write. I've got a record I'm working on right now called 10 Telecaster Tales. And it's that stuff. It's kind of, but it's just solo fingerstyle electric guitar stuff, but it's that pocket of R&B, jazz, blues, it's kind of what I like. I feel like it's maybe not my most natural thing. Most natural thing might be plugging in a Les Paul into a Marshall and blowing my brains out. That's what when I was a kid, that's what I did. And the stuff that I learned from Clapton and Beck and Page, like that's the stuff that's, I'm 70 and that's something I can, still get my yayas out,
Let's talk about your wife, Jeanette, because it's clear how much you love her and how much appreciation you have for her when it comes to your love of music. And you write about the year 2000 when she was the family's more consistent breadwinner. So how important is she to you?
She's the most important thing in my life, and she always was. And, we spent a lot of time talking about Triumph, but the truth of it is, and in the memoir I say, I joined that band because she was my girlfriend at the time, and we were talking about wanting to move out and live together. And Triumph said, well, we'll pay you $175 a week whether we gig or not. And I went, hey, if I do that between her job and my job and my friend Andy Brackis's student loan, the three of us could rent a little place and we can move out and live together. And so I joined Triumph because I wanted to do that. And a year later, I married her, So I didn't join Triumph because I wanted to be a rock star. I joined Triumph because I wanted to see if I could fall in love with this woman and marry this woman. And so 47 years later, she's still the most important thing in my life, and 4 kids and 4 grandkids with a 5th one on the way. Like, it's been a pretty great life, and as what you alluded to was that time period where, I'd gone indie. I was still going out and playing gigs. I could make okay money, but for the kids, we were going to need college funds, and the kids needed to have cars to get around in and stuff, because there was a lot of them. They were spread out. I'm going, okay, well, she had a job where she eventually became like a national sales manager for Jostens. I think you Americans might know about the company that does school rings and mortar boards,
yeah,
school pictures and all that stuff. Yeah. So she rose in that company, and man, she had dental plan and all that kind of stuff for the kids. So I leaned on her, and the thing about the leaning was it was selfish because I was pursuing this artistic thing where me and these things and my studio, I was able to have the time and given the rope to hang myself, and she stuck it out. She never lost faith in me, and I was lucky. I was blessed by that for sure.
Yeah, great story. You were offered to sing for Asia around 1991, but declined. And there's a great story in the book about being offered the job to sing for Boston in 1992, only you didn't know it was for Boston.
Well, I knew it was for Boston because, I went and I was with Tom Schultz, and we spent an afternoon together. We went out for dinner together, but I thought I was under and it was my own misconception. I thought what I was sort of auditioning for was to sort of become a guy that would be partnering up with Tom, like writing new songs, playing on a new album. And I went to his studio and I was singing parts on recordings, and coming up with parts and things. And I'm thinking, wow, this feels like it's a creative partnership kind of a thing. And then I got back home, and a couple of days later, I get a call from Tom's lawyer, sort of manager guy. And he goes, "Hey, congratulations. You're in. You got the job." I went, "Oh, great." He goes, "And so the tour starts." I go, wait, what? And he goes, "Yeah, this is so that you'll be a singer and a guitar player in the touring band when they go out this summer." And I went, "Oh, I thought this was like to sing on an album or something and to be writing songs with them and stuff." And he said, "Well, no, but hey, why don't we just do this and go out and see where it leads?" See. And I went, "Yeah, no, thanks, but I'm not interested in being a sideman in somebody else's band. Like I thought there was going to be maybe more to it than that." And I meant no disrespect to Tom. I mean no disrespect in telling this story now. Tom was perfectly willing, perfectly capable of running his business however he saw fit. But it was kind of like it was me kind of laboring under an illusion.
Yeah, well, I think this was when I remember the album Walk On came out, and it was without, well, there was some songs with Brad Delp and some songs with
a guy that I've become friends with, Mike Schotten. He sang
Okay.
on, I think, some of the stuff on that record. He's been hired like literally just kind of as a studio guy to be singing on the record. And so the record was a done deal. And I didn't realize that. Tom was just running 24, like 2-inch tapes. And then he had open tracks and he'd say, "Hey, sing this on this open track, sing this harmony. Hey, double this, triple this. Hey, put a harmony." And Tom had this mind where he could create parts, instantly and layer them up. That's why those records sound the way they do, And I was thinking, the genius of Tom Schultz, I'm going to be part and parcel of a creative process. And then the guy on the phone call said, "Oh, no, the record's already done. The record's already finished." I go, "Finished? Oh, okay. Never mind."
Wow. What do you hope people will gain from reading your book?
I hope people would maybe feel like creativity should play a stronger and more important role in their life and in their mental health. I hope that people would feel like, hey, Rik Emmett is a pretty cool guy, and he was a rock star, and it didn't turn out too bad. So, in my life, I don't necessarily need to be a rock star in order to be able to make good things happen and focus on the what matters in life, because that book, it's really just about fundamentals. It's really about kind of family and love and kindness and forgiveness. And it's about virtue and vice, and how I, as one of my life lessons was, lean on the virtue. There's a thing in the book that I wrote about where I went, I thought about the shortcut, the low road. And I went, yeah, I think I'm going to take the high road. And the reason I want to take the high road, it may be harder and it might be colder and but it's way better lit. That metaphor for me was like, yeah, that kind of encapsulates, that if you choose virtue, you're actually choosing an easier life to live within yourself. Your life is going to be an easier thing to take. It's when you're looking for shortcuts and you're deciding to cut somebody else's grass or, and I don't mean that in a good way, because you could cut somebody's grass and it would be a nice thing to do.
Sure.
Yeah. But, I think that greed and ambition are not necessarily, ambition is a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think too much of it, you can turn into Gordon Gekko,
Do your best, but make sure you're doing the best you. We all fall into that, the American dream. What is the dream? And you think it's getting a big house with a white picket fence and it's this and that. It's whatever you think, whatever works for you. Don't sell your soul.
Us Canadians, we would get to see those ads that the Army would do. And it was like, it wasn't anymore. It wasn't Uncle Sam wants you. It would be the best that you can be, but that's the Army's going to tell you what the best you is. Right. And you're saying, no, I think I should choose what's going to be the best me. And maybe you would choose the Army. Maybe that will be the thing that makes, and I had a friend from high school. In fact, that's exactly what he chose. He chose the military and he never looked back. A lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, the song Fight the Good Fight, there were a lot of folks that thought I was writing about a biblical kind of a fight, a fight about religion, a fight about the kinds of things that St. Paul was trying to get everybody to teach. But I really think the fight for me was more about your own fight. You choose your fight, and the good one is the one that you've chosen that really is you, not somebody else telling you what you are, but you deciding, yeah, I think this is me. So I hope people would get that from the book.
Lay it on the line, a backstage pass to rockstar adventure, conflict, and triumph. It's out now through ECW Books. And
yes.
Yeah, you can find it wherever books are sold. And where can people find you online, Rikk?
Well, rickemmett.com, RIKEMMETT, but you can also, Facebook, Instagram, I've got a lovely person named Kathy Wagner in New Jersey that kind of runs these things for me, my social media things. And by the way, I'm going to mention these since we're doing the wrap up. I've just shot a little video that's going to be on MJS pickups, I'm demonstrating a new guitar that has their new pickups, but I'm also kind of world premiere some of the pieces, little snippets of these pieces from 10 Telecaster Tales. So that's going to start happening in the next little while. I mentioned the Diamonds compilation thing. Yeah. So it's not just the book. There's all these other things that are still happening because, I'm still chasing it,
Rikk, thank you so much. This was a pleasure to talk with you. I was really looking forward to this.
Thank you, Eric. I've really enjoyed this too.
That's it. It's in the books.